Hello and welcome to this section where we are going to install Microsoft Azure Connect, previously known as Azure AD Connect, on our server. So the very first thing we need to double check is how do we download the software. So it's a piece of software called an agent that would reside on your server, and it will be pushing update. It will serve as a bridge between your server and Office 365. First of all, let's go into Office. So this is my Office 365 tenant, and this is my admin center, and this is my Microsoft Azure admin center. I did mention in some part of the earlier introductory phase of the course, when we were setting up the lab, that you can get all these resources if you sign up for the Microsoft 365 developer program. That will give you access to a Microsoft tenant together with some licenses, and then you can work away with be able to go about with getting this kind of setup done. So when it comes to Active Directory, this is Microsoft Azure Admin Center, which used to be called Azure Active Directory. In Azure Active Directory, you have the tree view at the left hand side where you have all users, you have groups, and you have devices, and a whole lot of other things. For instance, if you go to all users in my tenant, you can see that these are all users that I have had in the past, which I still do. And you can see that there's this column called on-premises sync enabled. So I have actually connected my Azure Active Directory to some on-prem services before. So you can see when I did a sync, it shows that this account, for instance, had an on-premise sync enabled. So I had a server with Active Directory that had this user, and then it was synced into my tenant. So that's basically what we are just going to do here. So in order to get that set up, you need to download what we call the Microsoft Azure Connect application. So it's more like an agent. Normally, to get that, you have to go into your Azure admin center. You can go there by going to your admin center and then go to identity, and then that will bring you to this page. And over here, you can go to identity. When you drop this down, you show more, and then you have hybrid management, and you have the option to go for Microsoft Azure Connect. Now, these are the options that you have when you want to set up the Azure AD Connect or Microsoft Azure Connect. You have the cloud sync approach, and you have the connect sync approach. So the connect sync approach is the one that gives you the option to be able to sync all the features that you're looking to migrate or to have replicated from your Azure, from your on-prem to the cloud. So because I have done this before, I don't have the option to download it here. Normally, there will be a link here for you to download. So we would manually go and download it from Google. So I would go to download Microsoft Azure Connect v2. And this is the option. And we have the link to download here. So it allows you to quickly onboard Azure ID and Office 365. So I'll choose English and I'll select download. And you can see, even though they've rebranded it called Microsoft Azure Connect, the MSI file that we'll be using to install the agent on our server is still called Azure AD Connect, which is typical of Microsoft. So we'll wait for that to download, and while that's downloading, we will just go ahead and fire up our server. So Windows Server 2019 to start. So we have the server booted up, and we have the file downloaded as well. I moved it to my downloadables folder. So if I go to File Explorer on the server and I go to this PC, I think I have to mount my downloadables folder again. Just bear with me now. So go to Devices, and optical drives, choose the disk image. Yeah, that's already attached. Okay, choose, and then I don't know why it's not showing up. I'll just reinstall my guest editions so that I can be able to move folders in between. Install, yeah. So I'm just going to reboot the server so that I can have access to all the documents of the folder that I have on my host machine, so that I can just install the Azure AD Sync MSO file on the server. I'll see you in a minute. So the installation was successful. I just need to make sure that the shared folder is set up. And so I just add a new shared folder. Choose downloadables. And I'll auto mount it. Click OK. OK. Then it should be here now. So this is the Azure AD Connect. So we're going to run this on the server. And it's going to take you through the installation. So this is the basic setup when you want to install Azure AD Connect on the server. You need to get the agent, and then once the agent is now on the server, then you can run it and go through the process. So this is the first step of the process. So Azure Active Directory connects or integrates your on-premises and online directories. So this installation tool would guide you. So we'll follow this guide. So we'll agree to the license, and then we would continue. And this is where we have the option to use express settings, or we want to customize settings. In the past, when I've been doing this, I normally just go for use express settings. But since this is a complete system administrator course, I think we need to go through the fine tuning of what specific things you need to manually set up if you don't want to end up having, like for instance, in the past, when I go to this all users, the ones I've done before, you'd realize that I have these accounts. If you have a look at this, for instance, this on-premises directory synchronization, accounts that I don't need. If I go to groups, let me just see if I go to groups. Let me see if there's a better way. Yeah, look at these groups that I never needed to have on in my Active Directory in Azure. I could have manually selected what groups I wanted to be synced from the on-premises Active Directory to the online Azure Active Directory. So when you go with the express settings, it just pushes everything. We don't want to do that. So what we do is we would go with custom. And with custom, normally you would take what's required here. But ideally, you want to leave this blank so that when you're going through the process of the installation, it would manually ask you one by one if you need them, right? And I'm just going to push this up. So I'm just going to leave this blank, and then we would click on install. And it's going through the installation, and this normally will take some few seconds. So that installation had gone through, and this is the next phase, and this is where we need to take what are some of the things that we want to ensure is sync across. The basic thing is the password hash synchronization. So that means basically you want to be able to sync any password changes you make on your Active Directory on the server toward Azure Active Directory. So when you reset the password in Azure Active Directory, when you reset the password in Active Directory on your server, it then writes towards the same account that's been synced across to Azure Active Directory. So if the user is signing in into, say, emails, Outlook, and the password is reset in the server in Active Directory, that password is now going to be the new password that you're going to use to sign in into your cloud services. And that's basically what the password hash synchronization is about. Anyway, you can read on it if you want. But this is the basic one that will be taken. And we would, if we want to enable SSO as well, what we'll do is we'll keep this box ticked. And if you want to configure other stuff as well, based on what your organization prefers, this is where you choose them. But I would leave this and this as the default that I'll go with, and then we would click next. And to ensure that you have Azure AD Global Administrator, we need to sign in into Azure AD with your tenant administrator. So whatever, if you had signed up for a Office 365 developer account, whatever admin account you have set up as the global administrator, you can use that. So I'm just going to use that to authenticate myself. So that's next. And I'll add this. Close. These are the security policies that are being checked. Yeah, so because they had been blocked, because there was a block with those policies and the server policies, and what I'll do is we'll try that again, because now that I've added them, it should now allow us to go through smoothly. So I would type in the password again. Yep. Sign in with the same credentials again. Have to prove the sign-in request. So that's approved. It's verifying my credentials, and it's verifying that the account has global administrator permissions, because that's the only way that we can get that added. And this is where you would have to select what forest in your Active Directory services on your server to add. Obviously, I only have this set up. Some other people would have their custom forest to be maybe extraction.com, or if there's a domain joined to the Active Directory, that can be, and that's being used as a forest, you can choose that. But I'll just leave this as default for now. And I'll click add directory. And I now need to authenticate using my on-premises local administrator account. So that's here. and it's administrator, and then put password. Yep. Okay. Yeah. So that's configured. We'll click next. Select the on-premises attribute to use as Azure AD username. So this is where you're being asked. So you know when you create a new account in, let me just open Active Directory now since we're on a server. When you go to this user, actually we have this OU. So this user logon name is what we're talking about. So the user principal name is going to be what is being pushed to Azure AD as the username. So we want to be pushing this same one as a username in Azure AD. So I'll keep this as it is, and we would tick this, and then we'll click next. And then this is where we have the option to choose the specific OUs in our local Active Directory that we want to sync across. And we don't want to sync across all this. So when I go to my Active Directory, if you go to users, you have all this. If you go to this, I only have this. So I don't want to push unwanted OUs and accounts and groups over to the cloud. I only want to push specific OUs that I want to choose. That's why we didn't go with the express settings. We went with a custom. So I am just, for training purposes, I am just going to choose this OU to push. So that would mean that any changes that I make in this OU would be synced across. So that means this is where we'll be creating our users and stuff. So just out of interest, I'm just going to create a new OUs, new, so that we can select multiple ones. I'll take this. This is developers OU. Oh, I think I already have that. Finance OU. Finance department. So we have developers OU here. I'll just rename this. No, cancel. I'll just rename this to developers department. And I'll create another, this is sales and marketing department. And we'll create another OU. And we'll call it, say ICT department. So we have sales and marketing, finance, ICT, developers. Yeah, that should be enough. So these OUs are what we'll keep. So now when I go to sync selected and I drop this down, I would untick all of this. I'll choose finance, ICT, sales and marketing, and development. So this is where I would just choose as OUs. So if I had things to do with managing computers, I would have to choose the computers group or any other OUs that have computer objects. If you are planning to do things with Microsoft Intune, or Microsoft device endpoint management, then you'll be considering keeping some of these containers that contain objects to do with computers and workstations. But that's not the purpose. We are not looking at that at this level. So we'll just keep this OUs and we would push them across. So I would click next and select how users will be identified on-premise directory. Users are represented only once across all directories. That's what we'll leave. We'll leave all these as default. And let me just see. We'll leave these as default, and then we'll click next. And then we would synchronize all users and devices. So I would go with keeping this as synchronizing all users and devices because I've already chosen the specific OUs that I want to sync across. And so I would go with next. And this is where you're now asked again, what are some of the optional features? We manually chose this as default in the beginning, but the other options that we have to take is, for instance, password write back. So password write back in this case is, can we allow if a user resets your password on any of the Office 365 platforms, does that affect a change in the password? Does that write back to the password that's been set in Active Directory? If you have the necessary licenses in your tenant that allows that, then you can tick that. We don't have it, but we would tick it as well, just in case, and click next. Ignore the rest. Enter a domain and option to configure. So I'm just going to enter a domain controller administrator. So I think my username is administrator. And then I'll put my password. Click OK. Now we'll click next. And then it's now ready to configure. So once you click install, we'll do the following. They'll configure the sync services, they'll enable SSO, and they'll configure our AD connector in general, and this would be our local connector. We would enable password hash, which is the forward direction from resetting passwords from the server, and it should forward the hash to Azure Active Directory so that you can use whatever password that was changed in the Active Directory on-prem. It can take effect on or make a change on whatever the password is going to be used for the cloud services, and vice versa for the write back if we do enable that. So what I'll do is we will just leave everything as it is and we'll click install, and this normally will take a few seconds. So after some couple of failures, I just retried it a couple of times, which you're likely to experience. And now we have the configuration complete. So Azure AD Connect configuration has been successful and the synchronization process has been initiated. So that means the installation was successful. And what we need to do now is we need to verify, does it work? So the OUs that we chose and those users in those OUs, they're going to sync across. So I would just click on exit. And then I'll see you in the next video where we would be checking our verifications to see how does it sync across from our server to Active Directory. And then we'll create some accounts and see how do they sync. And we'll try to set up a cloud account and try to sign into Office 365 services. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.